What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. It's, episode 7, I think? I'm going to be honest with you guys. We don't really have time to podcast. If you have been to our website, then you get what I'm saying. Since our last podcast on last Wednesday, I counted them up. Parker and I have posted 32 stories at SI Sooners. That's allsooners.com. And to top that off, my man Parker is back at school. Parker, did you have your Scooby-Doo lunchbox and your backpack for your final semester in college today?
Yeah, well, as far as the current circumstances go, John, I think a hazmat suit would be more appropriate. But sure, we'll go with the Scooby-Doo backpack. That sounds a lot more warm and fuzzy.
No doubt. I'm John Hoover. I'm in Tulsa. That's Parker Thune. He's in Norman, and we are... Well, I'll say it again. I'll brag. We're the number one website in SI's college network. There, I said it. I never get tired of saying that. It's not number one because we like it, because of course we do. It's number one because, guys, we have the most unique users, page views, traffic, metrics, data, analytics, and so on. We did it. We climbed to the top. Now I've told Parker this. I've got this Nick Saban complex where I'm like constantly paranoid now. I've got to stay on top. I don't know what the ratings are going to be this Wednesday's meeting. But we'll find out tomorrow. Next week, I might not be able to say it, so I got to say it right now. We're number one. Although I got a good feeling about this week, Parker. 32 stories, man. We've been busy. I'm just saying.
That's certainly the case, John, and we're busy all over the place, whether that's basketball or the world of football recruiting or new protocols for the upcoming football season. A lot of stuff happening over at SI Sooners, and yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about those numbers coming out at the meeting tomorrow. I think it's safe to say that we here at SI Sooners are going to continue to own the network.
Let's hope so. I think we offer the bestest and the mostest content, just saying. And listen, if you guys like the video version of the podcast, which is what you're listening to, the SI Sooners podcast, head over to my YouTube channel. I'm pointing right at you. Just search for John Hoover Media. Not only is there the podcast there, but all the interviews with Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, all the players. We got some more coming up this week. Bill Beedenbow tomorrow. We got Joe Castiglione up there. All kinds of stuff over on the YouTube channel. Today on the podcast, though, man, we got lots of recruiting. Lots of recruiting. SI Sooners brought you the inside scoop. Back-to-back days, actually, from the Sooner Summit, both Friday and Saturday. We're going to talk a lot about that, obviously. There was a commitment on Saturday night. Defensive lineman Kelvin Gilliam is a Sooner, or I guess he will be, whenever he signs the letter. And then running back Camar Wheaton put OU in his top 3, which is not unexpected by any stretch, but it is huge. And, of course, Lincoln Riley had a Zoom call today, Tuesday. We'll dig into that as well. Let's start at the top. Let's start at the summit. It's the Sooner Summit. So, Parker, I got to the Embassy Suites in Norman on Friday. About noon, spent an hour in the car talking to the 4 players that we had, Creed Humphrey, DeLaren Turner-Yell, Deshaun White, and Charleston Rambo. And then when the press conferences were over, I got into the Embassy Suites and worked at the little, I don't know, it was like a boardroom for about 7 hours straight. And 3 of those hours, believe it or not, were actually spent interviewing 9 Sooner Summit attendees. I couldn't believe the access that we had. I got Caleb Williams one-on-one, of course, but I also sat down with Tristan Lee, the offensive tackle. His name is Lee, by the way. I think we messed it up last week and called him Lay. Wide receiver Jalil Farouk was there. He talked to me for 15 or 20 minutes. Lineman Savion Byrd. Those 3 guys now, they're all uncommitted as of now. And we have posted stories. We have begun posting stories and will the rest of this week, as well as my full interviews with them at SI Sooners, allsooners.com. Caleb's interview posted Monday. Tristan's posted today, Tuesday. And then tomorrow, Wednesday, we will have Jalil Farouk. Thursday is going to be Savion Byrd. And then Friday, a little bonus. You loving this? Kyrie Jackson, a junior college defensive back who's actually committed to Alabama. Hard commit, it says. Well, he was at the Sooner Summit too. And he sat down and talked to us for about 10, 15 minutes. So I'm just asking, listen, could there be a flip in Oklahoma's future? You'll have to wait till Friday and hear it from Kyrie himself. And then next week, we've got interviews and stories about the other 4 guys who have already committed to Oklahoma who were there. You will not want to miss that. Now, Parker was there on Saturday, and the guys and their families had a rooftop meal at the Collective, I think it was, Parker?
Yeah, that's correct. The Collective in Oklahoma City was where they decided to go that Saturday evening.
Sounds fun. Parker was there with our man Spencer Forsyth. They were shooting video, bringing you interviews and commentary, good stuff. Parker, I have talked about Sooner Summit until I'm blue in the face, and I'll give you my takeaways here in a minute. I got to catch my breath. I just rode my bike, and I'm a little verklempt. I'm a little out of breath. But first, what were your takeaways from Sooner Summit?
Well, first, John, respect to you for staying in shape over the course of the extended COVID-19 pandemic. I think everybody out there could take a little page out of your playbook in that regard. I haven't gotten on the bike in quite a while, but no, reorienting to the Sooner Summit, it was really, and we knew this, John, absolutely unprecedented, to the point where there were a lot of Texas fans, Texas A&M fans, LSU fans, Oklahoma State fans all over social media complaining about how, well, there's absolutely no way Oklahoma pulled this off without committing any recruiting violations. There had to be some involvement from the athletic department of the football coaching staff. This kind of thing just doesn't happen. No, it does, and it did. And Carl Williams, Caleb's father, and Caleb Williams himself are the guys that are responsible. And what they were able to pull off this past weekend, getting, by my count, John, 16 of the top recruits in the country in the same congregation, all together, touring campus, checking out Norman, eating dinner together, enjoying camaraderie. It's something that the world of football recruiting has never before seen, John. And you mentioned the uncommitted guys that were in attendance this weekend. Savion Byrd, Tristan Lee, Jalil Farouk, Camar Wheaton at the top of that list. I think Oklahoma has to be in real good standing as far as their odds to land all four of those guys after this week, because just talking to the guys, for the most part, off the record, John, just enjoying conversation with them, getting to know each of those guys a little better, they all seemed to indicate that this visit and the opportunity to break the mold of what a traditional recruiting visit looks like, and just how laid back and relaxed everything was, and the way that Caleb and Carl orchestrated it, this was a really good sign in terms of their recruitment and in terms of Oklahoma's pursuit of these particular recruits. These guys were impressed, not just with the commits that Oklahoma has garnered thus far. Obviously, Caleb tops that list, but you're also looking at Cullen Montgomery, for instance. Danny Stutzman was there. Cody Jackson was there. But this is big, John, and I think this weekend is going to lead to some really good things for the Sooners on the recruiting trail. I think you're going to see Jalil Farouk commit to Oklahoma. I think you're going to see Tristan Lee commit to Oklahoma. And I think there's a really good chance that Savion Byrd follows suit. And hey, Brandon Drum, Colin Kennedy, our friends over at 24/7, they're already real confident that Camar Wheaton's headed down the line to Norman as well. So even though he put Oklahoma alongside Alabama and LSU in his top three last night, right now, John, the consensus is that all four of those uncommitted 2021 prospects that were at the Sooner Summit this weekend have begun to lean heavily towards attending Oklahoma. And Sooners fans have to be excited about that.
Well, they were all throwing the horns down when they had the photo op, and a couple of them were wearing literally head to toe OU gear. So you can read into that what you want. If you want to see it for yourself, you know what to do. Go to my YouTube page, John Hoover Media, or just go to our website, sisooners.allsooners.com. We'll have videos, again, posted, new one every day. Parker, my takeaways from this thing is, I guess first, the group is so mature. Talking to these kids, talking to 16 and 17-year-old kids, mature, composed, well-spoken. Can I just say real quick that when I was 16 or 17 years old, I was an absolute idiot. I was
weren't we all, John?
No, not Parker Thune. He was not. He was working at a radio station at the tender age of 14, meaning he had a modicum of professionalism in his body. I had no such thing. Of course, I mean, maybe Pontotoc County growing up, Ada will do that to you. Maybe. I don't know. Listen, I gave an interview, played on the football team, and the local TV radio station came down and did little interviews that they could air during their breaks. And I'm embarrassed about it to this day for what I was saying. You want to hear real quick my impression of what I said? He said, so what do you think about these Ardmore Tigers? And you know what my answer was? I don't like Ardmore. Never have, never will. That was my answer. You got one chance to talk about the Ardmore Tigers on the Ada radio station, and that's what you come up with? Parker, I'm so embarrassed. Anyway, my second takeaway, gosh, Carl Williams is the man. Uh, he was so warm and helpful and kind and gracious, especially when he was running guys in and out of that boardroom that I was in for those interviews for 3 or 4 hours. He really is. And every one of the players there commented on him and complimented him on his hospitality to do this, to go out of his way, not just for his son, but for them. That meant a lot to everybody. And then third takeaway is this could, maybe, we'll see, start a trend. If you think about it, this particular event, the Sooner Summit, was really born out of the pandemic, in that kids can't go to campus, they can't take their visits, they've had this stuff taken away from them. The NCAA shut it all down. But what did they do? They took it on themselves, especially the Williamses, to host this, and for the other guys to on their own dime be in attendance. I'm not sure how this is going to happen in the future. You know, on a regular schedule, the NCAA schools are picking up the tab for official visits. But these guys, again, they did it on their own dime, which is just remarkable. And then my fourth takeaway, I think you said 16 guys total. And if my count is accurate, there were 3 uncommitted prospects from the 2022 class, Parker, and even 1 or 2, I know 1 for sure, from the 2023 class. Unbelievable. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, we are going to discuss Kelvin Gilliam, why this commitment is so big for Alex Grinch in Oklahoma, and maybe who's next in the line in the hashtag LinkUp21 group. Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond, or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at @all_Sooners. Social media, follow SI Sooners on Twitter at @all_Sooners. Find Parker at Parker Thune, Thune, and of course I'm at John E. Hoover, simple enough. Parker is also on Instagram at Parker Thune. I'm on Instagram, but I never post. I'm not nearly cool enough to be on Instagram. I just kind of look at what my daughter posts, and sometimes my son. But you can find me on Facebook. You know that because I'm an old guy. John E. Hoover Media on Facebook, John E. Hoover Media. And oh yes, my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. Parker, in your conversation last week with big Kelvin Gilliam, the big defensive lineman from the DMV area, Highland Springs, Virginia, I believe, he left an impression on you about his desire to come to Oklahoma and change kind of everyone's mindset about what the OU defense can look like. Then he pulls the trigger Saturday night, chooses OU over Penn State. His future, presumably, many of his future teammates were in Oklahoma City watching the stream of his decision, of his announcement. I mean, what's not to like, Parker, about Kelvin Gilliam?
Well, there's a lot to like, John, especially, you start with his versatility. Him and Calvin Thibodeau have talked, is what he told me, and they both kind of share the same vision as to how he fits into the Sooners picture of the defensive line. He can play inside, he can play outside. He figures to bulk up to 280, 290 and be kind of that swingman type of player that can play wherever you put him along the offense, or rather the defensive line, but he's a guy that wants to play wherever the Sooners will put him. He's eager to make plays. He's eager to be a disruptive force in the backfield, and he's a great kid, John, and that's the case with a lot of these guys that the Sooners have brought in this 2021 class. Obviously, they're fantastic football players, but they're great people off the field, and Kelvin Gilliam is no exception. Exceedingly well-spoken kid. He's always so generous with his time. Obviously gave us an exclusive last week, and he and his teammate Damon Harmon, also out of Highland Springs, figure to be 2 of the centerpieces for the Sooner defense in years to come. He himself told me, John, he wants to be a freshman All-American the second he steps foot on campus. That's his goal. Obviously, the overarching goal for everybody in this 21 class, all these guys that Caleb Williams has kind of formed a coalition with, their overarching goal is to win a national championship. and that's a given. But I thought it was very, very telling to me and very much a testament to Kelvin Gilliam's goal-oriented mindset that he was able to articulate to me exactly what he wanted to accomplish as soon as he arrived at Oklahoma, and that's to become a freshman All-American. And I tell you what, if you look at his tape, you look at how overpowering he is, the way that he's able to combine strength and finesse in the trenches, it's absolutely within the realm of possibility, and I would consider it, given what Oklahoma is going to roll out in terms of their defensive scheme, I would consider it even a likelihood.
Yeah, I'd say that's not out of the realm of possibility at all when you consider he'll be playing alongside probably Perrion Winfrey and Joshua Ellison, the 2 JUCO transfers this year. He'll be working in probably the rotation a little bit with them. You figure Ronnie Perkins is probably off to the NFL after this year, regardless of how many games he actually gets to play. You just kind of project that he's going to leave. LaRon Stokes, what's his status? LaRon Stokes, is he coming into his senior? So he's a junior college transfer last year.
Yeah, junior college
so
transfer.
He would be playing with Jalen Redmond. He would be playing with Winfrey and Ellison and maybe Jordan Kelly, guys like that. Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see him coming on, making 30 tackles and, 5 sacks or something like that, making an impact at various, as we've said in the past, various positions across the defensive line. So he's OU's 14th commit. Parker, who's next for Alex Grinch? What does your gut say?
Well, on the defensive side of the football, John, they've really got a well-stacked class of recruits in this 2021 cycle. I think you're going to see a lot more commits in the future on the offensive side. I mean, you look at Jalil Farouk, you look at Camar Wheaton, you look at potentially a guy like Emeka Egbuka, Savion Byrd, Bryce Foster, and Tristan Lee, the 3 offensive linemen that Caleb Williams said he really, really wants to go and get. So offense, I think, has once again become the priority because when you look at the defensive line in particular, they add Gilliam to a class that already included Ethan Downs, Nathan Rollins-Kabanji, and Clayton Smith. I will say, you talked to Kyrie Jackson, John, and he very much left the door open on his hard commitment to Alabama. I can't recall exactly what he told you, but I can recall that what he said was something to the effect of, hey, nothing's official until I sign the dotted line in December. And so given the vibes that I got from all the attendees at Sooner Summit, is there a chance that Kyrie Jackson flips? Absolutely. I think there is certainly a chance. I also look at another DMV area safety in Damon David, a 3-star guy out of Reisterstown, Maryland. Extremely impressed with the program. He's another guy that's close with a lot of those DMV area recruits that the Sooners have already pulled in, Caleb Williams being one of them, obviously. So I think you look at who they still have outstanding offers to on the defensive side of the football, they're probably not going to get any more linebackers at this point in time. In terms of defensive linemen, Scooby Williams is a maybe. That's really up in the air, and being able to snag a guy like that out of SEC territory, Birmingham, Alabama, is a task for any Big 12 school, let alone one with a reputation on defense that's still kind of recovering from a down era like Oklahoma is. But I think if you see any further additions on the defensive side of the football in terms of commitments down the line, you're probably looking at defensive backs, and Kyrie Jackson has to be at the top of that list just based on the experience that Sooner Summit brought for everybody involved, particularly him as a guy that was already committed and yet decided, you know what? This is something that has never happened before in the history of college football recruiting. I have to go be a part of it, regardless of my pledge to Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, and he's got some friends, as you said, from the DMV area on this at the Sooner Summit. But here's the deal. They couldn't meet with the coaches on campus. I guess there's theoretically they could accidentally bump into them, quote unquote. But they couldn't meet with them. They couldn't talk with them for more than a hi-bye kind of situation. And there were compliance people there, you better believe it, making sure that none of this under the table was going on. But they did have a Zoom call, I'm told, with Lincoln Riley and the OU coaching staff. So they were in a ballroom kind of across the hallway from where I was. What do you think Lincoln Riley said when he looked on the Zoom or looked on a computer and he saw Kyrie Jackson? Like, is that is that Kyrie? Kyrie, is that you? Kyrie, what are you doing here? Hey, does Nick Saban know you're here? Yeah, could you just see that, man? I mean, I actually asked him that question. Does Nick Saban know you're here? I just thought it had to be asked. It's probably bad taste, bad form, but he said he did. He said he wanted him to go out and have his experiences, take his visits, live his life, and then sign that paper. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens in December. Parker, I don't know if you saw my text last night, but kind of right before I climbed into bed, I texted you and said, I guess Camar Wheaton has gone radio silent again. This was several hours after his tweet earlier in the day saying he was going to drop his top 2. So we waited and waited and waited for him to drop his top 2, and nothing happened. I was pretty tired last night, Parker, I have to say, and I checked out a little bit early, which a little before midnight for me, which is actually early. And then this morning, I'm up at 5 a.m., and there it is. Camar Wheaton didn't drop his top 2. He dropped his top 3 about 0:30, literally 12:30 at night. And suddenly, Parker, LSU was in the mix, and Texas was out. But, hey, Oklahoma's in there. So, answer the question for me, Parker. LSU bag man, make him an offer he couldn't refuse, or what?
Well, John, it looked for the longest time like it was going to come down to Oklahoma and Texas for Camar Wheaton. I really do think it's between Oklahoma and LSU at this point. I think Alabama's just kind of in there for prestige purpose. I can't really make sense of it, especially after he said he was dropping his top 2. So you have to imagine that one of those schools is just kind of a placeholder, which I'm really not sure why he would have one of those at this point in time. But look, odds are he's headed to Oklahoma. I mean, the Sooners want him badly. Lincoln Riley and his offensive staff have expressed this time and time again through their interactions with him and how they continue to pound the recruiting trail in search of a commitment from Wheaton. They've pulled off recruiting any other running backs in this 21 class. Obviously, you look at Evan Pryor and Travion Henderson, both committed to Ohio State long ago. Ever since then, really, they've been all in on Camar Wheaton. If they don't get him, they're not getting a running back in the 21 class. And to bring in a 5-star guy like that, when you're already looking at a class that includes the talents of Caleb Williams, SI 1000, SI All-American's #1 overall prospect, and 2 really elite wide receivers, both members of the SI 99 in Mario Williams and Cody Jackson. I mean, that's going to be a dangerous class of offensive talent. I think Camar Wheaton perceives that. And if I had to place bets, John, I'd say he's coming to OU.
It's probably a pretty good bet. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, we're going to talk about Lincoln Riley's Zoom call today. I love saying that. It was only 21 minutes, usually 30, 35, but this thing was jam-packed with some pretty great sound bites.
Hey there, loyal listeners. Parker Thune here with SI Sooners. Are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're just a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonerssi@gmail.com or send us a direct message on Twitter at @all_Sooners.
Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. We got to talk about Lincoln Riley today. We're recording this on Tuesday, and hopefully you're hearing it on Wednesday. But man, Parker, you talk about an eventful press conference. We got COVID data. Half the guys are back, Riley said, like 9 out of the 17 who had it last week. We got a line in the sand about guys who want to opt out. If you opt out, you don't get to train at the team facilities unless, I guess, a special circumstance. And basically, Riley said, we do not talk about opt-out club. That's rule number 1. We got an update on the quarterback situation. Not really, but, he said that the timeline for when he would normally name a starter is basically all jacked up. And we got news that an entire position group, all but one player, was basically wiped out by COVID, a positive COVID test and a quarantine, before a scrimmage last week. Riley said, basically they go out on the football field, and in this major position group, which he didn't name, but he did say it had a bunch of bunch of players in it. Like, I'm picturing probably the offensive line is my guess. That's just a guess. He said there was only one guy on the field. Parker, it's been a long time since I've seen a live football game, but I don't think you can play offensive line or any other major position group with just one player.
Yeah, John, and let's hope that given the current state of the Sooner running back room, it's not the backfield that's been ravaged by COVID-19, because with Kennedy Brooks already out of the picture, they can hardly afford any more attrition there. But no, obviously Riley wouldn't identify which position group it was that had succumbed to COVID-19 on that large of a scale. But as you mentioned, 17 active cases as of yesterday, the most recent round of testing data. Riley said, I believe his exact words were 8 or 9 of those guys came back to practice today. So you're looking at, 8 or 9 that are currently sitting out. And it's another step back for Oklahoma after they went 6 weeks without a positive test, John. And here they are, just 3 weeks removed from the beginning of the season with 8 or 9 guys that are sitting sidelined due to COVID-19. I will say it was interesting, John. It was interesting to hear Riley offer praise to Jaden Hazelwood, because that really caught my attention, because Hazelwood obviously is a guy that has been sidelined for months with an injury that he suffered in an off-season training accident. He's not, as far as we know, contracted COVID-19 or had any issues with the virus, but Riley really made a point to praise Hazelwood, because what he said was, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what Hazelwood is going through as an individual with the injury, the rehab, all of that, even though he's dealing with all of that and he's unable to go through the same routines and the same rituals as the vast majority of the team, he's out there every single day encouraging his teammates, going through every single walkthrough and preparing as if he's going to play week 1, which we all know, and Riley has said he's not going to. But I thought it was super interesting to hear Riley offer up one specific individual player, because he doesn't usually do that, John. He normally won't make an example out of a single player. I thought it was very, very intriguing to me that he chose to do that in these circumstances with Jaden Hazelwood.
I'm going to give you my take on Jaden Hazelwood in just a second, but I wanted to ask you about Kennedy Brooks and maybe the concept of Kennedy Brooks opting out. Maybe would be a better, not Kennedy himself. He's going to do what, like Charleston Rambo said Friday, that's between him and God, whatever decision he's got to make. That's kind of true. I want to ask you about the concept of opting out and Lincoln Riley drawing a line in the sand and saying, I talked to the leadership council on this team, some of the seniors, some of the guys who've been here, and we decided that we're only going to talk about the players who are here. And in the context of Jaden Hazelwood is here. He's bringing out and doing everything he can to be involved with the team. Guys who are not, guys who might opt out. And by the way, Lincoln was asked if anybody else has opted out, any other players, and he said, yeah, we're not going to talk about it. So there could very well be players who opt out. We're going to have to keep a daily check on the roster to see who's in, who's out. Of course, Kennedy Brooks is still on the official roster, so it's getting crazy. Here's the deal. I asked him today, Lincoln, probably one of the weirder questions I've ever asked a coach on a Zoom call during a pandemic, and that is, how's it feel to be 36 years old and people are writing books about you, Lincoln? Because I had written a story earlier in the morning about the release today of the new book, Sooner. That's the name of the book, Sooner. It's a play on words. It's not only Oklahoma Sooner, it's also, this guy is so young, 36 years old. Here he is doing it sooner than everybody else. It's about Lincoln Riley's rapid rise. Well, I had just gotten off the phone with the author, Brandon Sneed, super nice guy. There's a story, and you can listen to the interview at our website, allsooners.com. Super nice guy. He basically, Lincoln said, he didn't participate in the book, the interview process. Brandon Sneed worked for Bleacher Report, wrote a story about Lincoln kind of getting promoted back in 2017, right? Comes in, spends a week in Norman, gets to know him a little bit. And then he said, Lincoln, I'd like to turn this into a book. Lincoln said, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm 36. At the time, I'm too young, 33 years old, 36 years old now. I don't know. You don't need to be writing a book about me. I thought that was interesting. And he said today, when I asked him about it, he said he didn't feel quite right about having a book written about him at such a young age. In fact, the quote was, I got a long, long, long way to go before anybody should think about writing a book about me. And that's actually one of the angles, is Lincoln Riley is just too humble to agree to, let somebody tell his life story. Parker, what'd you think about that? The whole scenario, a 36-year-old head coach who's 3 years into his head coaching position, and they're already writing biographies about him.
Well, I think it's really remarkable, John, when you look back at the trajectory of Lincoln Riley's career and consider what's gotten him to this point. I mean, when he took over for Bob Stoops, nobody really outside of Norman, outside of the state of Oklahoma, knew Lincoln Riley's name. They said, oh my gosh, this is a team that has competed for national championships year in and year out for the last 20 years, suddenly turning over their program to this 33-year-old offensive coordinator that's never been a head coach before at any level. And lo and behold, 2-3 years later, Lincoln Riley is one of the hottest and most sought-after names in the coaching industry. I mean, we've heard rumors about him jumping to the NFL for the last 2 years and how the Cowboys allegedly had interest in him, how Jerry Jones wanted to bring him in to front that program, that organization. But, I mean, John, it's incredible when you think about what Lincoln Riley has been able to do over the course of his 3 years at Oklahoma, already building himself a legacy. Really, this is a kid that grew up in Muleshoe, Texas, and went to Texas Tech to try to walk on and play quarterback for them. Soon discovered that his shoulder injury was going to be too much to overcome, and that the coaching path was the route he wanted to take. And my gosh, John, I mean, what he's been able to accomplish at 36 years of age, even though it hasn't culminated in that national title yet. And trust me, the Sooners are going to get there sooner rather than later. It's a matter of when, not if. The Sooners are going to get that national championship under Lincoln Riley, I can promise you that. But taking the Sooners to 3 consecutive college football playoff berths, churning out 3 consecutive Heisman Trophy finalists and 2 winners, and making the absolute most of whatever he's been given on the offensive side of the football, and the brilliance that he has displayed in his play calling ability, his design for the offense, and the balance that he's been able to incorporate between the run and the pass. Look, Lincoln Riley, make no mistake, is one of the finest coaches in the game at any level. And so, yes, while he does, there is some merit to what Lincoln's saying. Maybe it is too early for anybody to be writing a book about him. I mean, we're really witnessing a meteoric rise to fame from Lincoln Riley, and it's only going to continue over the next few years at Oklahoma.
Yeah, when a guy comes in and replaces a legend like Bob Stoops and goes 36-6 in his first 3 years, the initial reaction from anybody who's ever covered or followed closely college football is, yeah, well, just wait till he has to get his own recruits in here, right? That's not the case this time. He's actually recruiting better than his predecessor did at the end of Bob Stoops' tenure. So, yeah, that doesn't really apply. You know how it's like, when somebody gets their own recruits, Les Miles doesn't have Nick Saban's recruits anymore, right? No, that didn't really apply for Les, and it hasn't applied at all for Lincoln. After the press call today, right after it ended, this is called smart press management here by everybody, really, in the OU media machine. The school announced that there will be no tailgating on campus this year. You can tailgate off campus if the city of Norman lets you, or maybe you can tailgate at your house before you come into Norman. But they canceled homecoming. No walk of champions, 25% capacity. We got told by Mike Houck today that the press box is going to be down to the bare bones, really, in attendance. Parker, it's not even going to look much like Oklahoma football this year.
John, I'm just hoping I get one of those seats in the press box at this point.
Me too.
But no, you're right. There's going to be, we knew that it was going to bring a lot of change. 2020 is the year of the unprecedented in every sense. And it's one of those things where you just kind of got to roll with the punches. I mean, at the end of the day, John, they're playing football in Norman, and that's more than they can say up in Michigan, at Ohio State, at USC. Some of these elite programs across the country aren't even getting the chance to play college football this fall. So while it is going to look different, while it is going to be less of an experience than it usually is on game days in Norman, football is football, John. I'll take it. I think a lot of people will take it.
I'll take it. I just want to close. I want to say one more thing about the opt-out stuff. Parker, you wrote the story. Again, it's at allsooners.com if you want to read more. The Jaden Hazelwood illustration, I got to agree with you, man. It was fantastic. He basically said, if you're not all in with us, then go find somewhere else to train. He said Jaden Hazelwood, who, remember, hurt his knee in the offseason, as Parker mentioned, he's hurt, but he never opted out. He said Hazelwood is bringing energy, said he's staying engaged with his teammates. He's working out, doing what he can, and he's vocal. And yes, he has access to all the facilities that all the active players do. You get the feeling from that, Parker, that, and really kind of on the whole, that we're only going to talk about the guys who are here. When he said that, you kind of get the feeling that Kennedy Brooks has suddenly gotten the cold shoulder. Listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're still working on Google. We're trying. Or just go to our website. That's the easiest way, allsooners.com. Click on the player and listen, either on your phone or your computer, your tablet, whatever. And if you're more of a visual learner, you know what to do. Check out the video version over on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Parker Thune, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.